a woman of God, a daughter, a sister, a mother, a grandmother, a poet, a psalmist, an author, a business mogul, a queen. SHAY7, the woman at the wheel.
So I grew up in Atlanta. I'm a native. A lot of people ask me, are you originally from Atlanta? Yes, I am. And I was raised by a single mother. I have 2 siblings by my mom, on my mom's side, a brother, and I have a sister. I didn't grow up in church. And sometimes when I was around my other preacher friends and hearing about their family and everything and how they grew up, I felt a void. And I was like, wow, God, I have no one to teach me. Sometimes we could go with our friends, and sometimes we went on Easter. And I do remember when they built a little church up the street in our apartments, and she would allow us to go there. And I remember, one thing I do remember when I was young, that every time there was an altar call, I went to the altar. And I think about that because you think about those things as you become who you are as an adult. So you think about those things.
This is where the church was. And they tore it down actually when we were kids, but we would come here and it was just a safe place. It was just a place that I loved, and my sister and everything. And we had, joined in with the songs and everything. It was a great space for us. And like I said, my mom would let us, because it wasn't too far up the street, she would let us come up here. But I think it was very significant, I think, in my walk with God. And so, yeah, even though it's not here anymore, I think it was very important. I think it was a seed sown. I had many seeds sown in my life, but I think this was very important. Churches are important to communities. Sometimes we don't know how important they are, but this church spoke to a little girl like me. So, yeah.
My mother was a drug dealer. She was not like most pastors' moms and everything. My mother sold drugs, and we lived in what they call the projects. I remember the night so well. My mom, she was suspicious, and she told me to look out of the bathroom window, and I looked out of the bathroom window, and she wanted me to watch this fan. But anybody that knows me, if I'm doing something and if it's not energetic, I'll fall asleep. So I fell asleep in the window. When I woke up, there was a guy. He was walking by the patio. We had patios. And he was walking by the patio. And I thought nothing of it. And all of a sudden, I just heard a boom, boom. And they were busting down our door. And I remember trying to run into my mother's room. And I remember the officers flooding the house. The officers put their rifles on me as I was running through the hallway. And I remember the woman officer yelling, "Stop, that's a child." And so I never forgot that. That night they took my mom. But I remember praying that night to God, asking him to bring my mom home. I told God that we needed my mother. And I just asked him, please. I knew that what she had done was wrong, but I just asked him to bring her home. My mom came home that next day. God brought my mother home. And that was a big deal to a child. And so that's when I really start seeing the power of God. I was married twice to one man. That's Bradley, my first love. And I was married once to Tony. I've always known that I wanted to be married. I never wanted to not be married. My first marriage happened when I was 16. I met Bradley when I was 14. I was in love. At least that's what I thought at that age. Sometimes when you try not to make mistakes, you actually make mistakes. And so I tried hard to not be like my mother and my aunts, some of the women in my family who were not married. I wanted to be married and I wanted to have a family, and it was my dream to have the father of my kids with me. I wanted to do things right, but I was rushing, and I didn't know that at the time. I married Bradley. I wanted to please Bradley. I wanted to secure a family, and I also wanted to please God. But I did not want to be sexually active and not married. That was very important to me. And so I got married at 16. You couldn't have told me that Bradley and I would not be together. I thought that it would, I've seen other people get married real young and it lasts. And so I thought that the same thing would happen with us. I never knew that Bradley ended up getting on drugs. And that's how we parted. He could not shake the drugs. And nobody knew what was going on secretly between us. Nobody knew that I had told him that I was going to leave him and that I actually had left him. I wanted to keep Bradley a place to stay because Bradley did not have family. And so I did not tell all of my family members what was going on because I wanted him to be safe. I wanted him to be secure. I love Bradley so much that I didn't want him to not have a place to live. So even though I felt like I was done with the marriage, I didn't let everybody else know that I was done because I didn't want them to be done with him. I met Tony during the time, like I said, when I was going through things with Bradley and everything, and like I had secretly broken away from Bradley and everything. Tony and I met in hair school. That marriage was a very tumultuous marriage. Tony married me and he knew that he had another young lady pregnant with twins. And that was the course of that relationship. From that point on, that was the course of that relationship. It was more lies, and more lies. When Tony and I split, because Bradley and I had a child, mind you, we had Bradley Jr. So we had to keep in contact with each other. So he had gone to jail, he had gone to prison, and he had gotten off of drugs and everything. And he had expressed to me that he wanted his family back. Now, for me, I loved Bradley, and I really did not know how to date. And so it was safe. You just have to be honest. When you look at a lot of things, it was safe going back to Bradley. It was comfortable. And he was someone that I knew. So once I left Tony, it was just very easy to go back to what I knew. I've learned that sometimes trying not to make mistakes, you make mistakes. And that there are voids in your life that you can't fill. I didn't have my father. And I think not having him made me want to make sure I always had a husband to secure my children or my child, make sure that their father was there. But things happen in life. And what I've learned is to take my time. And I've learned to have time with God, and I've also learned to allow God to help you with your choosing. Allow God to lead you. Don't just run. Sometimes you can run so fast, and this is what God said to me. Sometimes you can run so fast you can outrun God because He has a plan for your life. And so I just learned to slow down. I've been by myself 20 years. And during that time, God has worked on me. He's revealed things in me. He's revealed things that I've done. He's revealed how I rushed. He's revealed how trying not to make mistakes made me make mistakes, and He's also revealed to me how I truly didn't know my own value. So I learned to look to God for my true value. Bradley, the last time, he cheated on me. And it wasn't a long time affair or anything like that. So I went through a lot. I came back to Atlanta. I was led back to Atlanta and everything. It was just so much. I lost my father. It was a lot. And for therapy, I started writing. And it ended up being a book. But I wanted the book to sell. And because I wanted the book to sell, I knew sex would sell. And so I started writing about sex, and I just started getting very vulgar. It wasn't even me. At times, how I was wording things. I started performing my poetry and everything, and I'll give you an incident, something that happened. I would perform at 112, at Club 112, Ryan Cameron. He was the host. And I remember Ryan Cameron calling me a church girl the whole time. He said he would call me a church girl. He said, and I thought I was looking like a club person, but he called me a church girl. But he said, wait till you hear what comes out of her mouth. I had a conflict I would go to church on Sunday. I would perform on Wednesday. I think we performed on Wednesday, and then I would go to church on Sunday. And just God was just really tugging me, and it just didn't feel right. And I think that night where it was the finals, and it was big money involved and everything. And I always say that God confused me. And I picked a poem about child support. And everybody thought I was gonna do the norm. They thought I was gonna do an erotic poem. But I got up there and I did a poem about child support. Oh my goodness. They booed me so bad. It was so terrible. And I didn't come back to the club. But I tell you what happened. One of my friends, she was trying to get me to come back to the club. And but I just told her, I said, you know what, I wasn't feeling right anyway. But I tell you, a few weeks after that, Russell Simmons came through and he discovered them. And that's when I think it was Deaf Poetry Slam or something, I'm not familiar. But one of the young ladies who I competed against, she actually received the Tony Award for that. So yeah, but that's how I started doing erotic poetry. I wanted the books to sell. The barbershop men, they loved them. I was working in a salon at that time, and I knew that I could go to the barbershops and everything and read a little something for them, and they loved it. And that's what I would do. First, it was a black and white book that I did myself. And it was full of curse words and poems about sex, lust, and all of that stuff. And so it went through different stages as I started to accept the call of God upon my life. I started cleaning the book up, and I still continue to, to write about my feelings and the different things, my family members. And I do write about love in this book, but I don't do it the way I used to do it. So yeah, but it just went through different stages. I'm very proud of this book because, like I say, it tells my story in poetry form. One of my professors at Emory, he said my book made him cry. And that was really deep to me. I thought that he was gonna say something crazy, but he called me into his office and he said he was amazed how I was able to get my story out and how I told my story. He had so many questions for me, but it really boosts my confidence. It boosted my confidence, and so I thank God for him. But yeah, so it's a diversified Black woman. I feel so blessed. And there's a 2 to this book. That's why it's volume 1. But yeah, I wrote this book coming out of depression and everything. Yeah. Coming out of depression. It helped me. It was good. I knew that if I answered my call, that I was going to be straight. I was going to be straight with God. I was not going to be somebody playing around. And I ran because I wasn't ready for that. I wasn't ready to give up everything. I wasn't ready to give up hookups. Let's just, be honest. If I go to the store and somebody will hook me up, I wasn't ready to give up those little things or to give up a man. I wasn't ready for that. And so I ignored the Lord. But it was one day, one of my friends, she saw God in my life and doing something. She said something to me. And so I got in my living room one day because I always talk to God. I would always talk to God. I would sit in my living room and everything and talk to God. And I talked to God and I just surrendered. I remember also too, God telling me that no matter how hard I work, that I could not keep the spirits that ran through my family off my sons. He said that to me. And he said, you're gonna need me. And I remember that. And I love my kids. And so it was easy for me. It was easy for me after that. It was easy for me to surrender to God. But I heard him calling a long time and I ran because I wanted my own way. I wanted to do things my own way. God didn't want anything to hold me down. He didn't want anything to hold me back. So he told me to release my secrets. And I didn't have very many, but I had two. And one was that I had been molested, and I didn't tell my mom. It was a family friend. His name was Dede. And I was probably about 5 years old, and it happened at my grandmother's house. And it happened right in front of their face, and they didn't know it. Dede has one arm, and we were at the dinner table, and he was near me, and he just continued to fondle me under the table. Even when I would press my legs together to try to make him stop, he still would do that. And so what I did when I answered my call, I called my mom and I told her. And I also told my oldest son at the time, because my youngest son was a baby. But God wanted me to release those things. I also had an abortion. And I'm gonna tell you, I was very ashamed of that, because I am a mother. I love children, I'm a nurturer, I love hard, but I was very ashamed of that. And when I was younger, I was very ashamed of that. I was so ashamed, and I just have to be honest, that on medical papers, I lied. When they would ask me, how many times have you been pregnant? I would say twice, because those are my two sons. I would never say 3 times. And it wasn't until God delivered me and told me to tell it that I could actually tell the truth and say 3 times. And so I told my mom that, and I told my oldest son. God, like I said, God does not want any secret holding you back, because he knows that the devil will tap on your head and he will hunt you, for those things. And so I had to release those things. Yeah. And so, I try to have compassion for other women or other people who've gone through those same things. God sent me back to school. He sent me to Spelman, and it was amazing. I remember the interview like it was yesterday. The dean called me into the office and everything, and she said that I looked great on paper, but she asked me how I was going to pay for it. And I remember everything just dropped in me, because I just felt like God had set me up for failure. I remember walking out of that building and God saying to me, will you stop it? Will you stop crying? You're gonna get in. And I remember getting my letter in the mail, and I got in. And so it was awesome. But God sent me back to school. And I think God sent me back to school because I wanted to be a role model for my boys. I didn't want to tell them to do something that I had never done. And so that was big for me. It was like I didn't want to look to someone outside of our house to be a role model to my children. I wanted to be that. And so God sent me back to school. He sent me to Spelman. And because I always felt like I was a Spelmanite anyway. But I just never, I was moving so fast, I never did that. But God, He made it happen for me. And it was not an easy journey. I had to teach myself all over again. There were things that I did not know. People thought I was so smart. The students thought I was so smart, but they had no idea how hard I was studying. They had no idea that when they were out for summers, I was still studying. They had no idea, what was going on. But I made it through, and I came out cum laude. So I thank God. Yeah, I thank God. And then He sent me on to, I thought He was done with me and I could go back to work and support my kids, and He sent me on to Emory, Candler School of Theology. And there, I tell you, I think I cried all the way through that school, because I was just like, God, I just don't understand. But I got a great understanding of the Word of God. And that's what I wanted, because when I answered my call, so many men were telling me, oh, women aren't supposed to preach. Women aren't supposed to preach. Well, I knew that wasn't true, because I did not want to preach. And I'm like, if God is calling me, why would He call me and I don't supposed to preach? And so I knew that there was another answer, and He sent me to get the answers. And I found out that there was a context to everything, and just how the word developed. I mean, just so many different things that I found out. And so it solidified me the more, in my ministry and everything. I've done youth ministry for the United Methodist Church. I've done young adult ministry. I've started different cafes for different rap artists to come and show off their talents, or dancers, whatever type of talent you have, because I've always felt that I'm different. I'm different, and it's been proven, every time I've been put in places where I stand out. And so I knew that God had more people like me. And so I've always been a part of ministries that gave those people a platform. And so I started cafes with two of the United Methodist churches. I've done prison ministry, and and it was such a blessing to me. I was afraid to go to the prisons, but I prayed about it, and God released me, because I didn't know how the women were gonna take me. Me coming in with my makeup and my heels and stuff on, I didn't know, what was gonna go down. But when I tell you those women loved me, and I had a chance to minister to one of the women who were to the only woman that was on death row. And that woman would call for me all the time, and so I really, I think prison ministry changed my life. It changed my views. And it just showed me how to love people past their problems and past their pains. And it just showed me also too how people do the best they can sometimes. Sometimes they don't know anything else to do. That's not everyone, but there are people out there, they do the best they can with what they have, and sometimes it's not good enough for us in society, but sometimes that's what happens in their lives. Before I answered my call, I wanted to be an R&B singer, and I actually tried my hand at that. That's what I wanted to be. But I answered my call. And so I kind of put that to the side. But God is so good. He'll give you the desires of your heart. You don't have to lose what you have. He'll just switch it up a little bit. And so that's what he did. When I came back from Canada, he told me to go into the studio. Now I'm like, God, I don't have it. I'm older now. My voice has changed. I don't have it. But God will still use what you have. And that's what he did for me. And I'm so thankful, and I'm gonna get better, and I'm gonna continue to do it because I'm gifted. I'm gifted in my writing. I'm gifted in so many areas. And so I really want to do more of it, and I'm not gonna give up on myself, because God didn't give up on me. And I'll tell you about two of my favorites songs. My gospel album, did my little gospel album, and like I said, we're gonna get better, we're gonna do better, but now I know that I can do it. Sometimes you don't know you can do a thing. I just see that God is with me, man. And when God is with you, everything and anything is possible. My first song we did, Never Seen the Righteous Forsaken, that's the title of that CD. And I did that title because that's how I felt inside. That's what encouraged me the whole time that I was going through, because it was hard going through and just still holding to your integrity as a woman. Never seen the righteous forsaken. I would always tell myself that, Shay, you are the righteous. God will never forsake you. And God would say it to me, Holy Spirit would say it to me, you will not be forsaken. And so that's why I wrote that song. Everything that's in that video, in that song, that's me. I broke it up, I did it a certain way because of the writer that I am, the director that I am, and I wanted to show different parts. So I put a young lady here, I put my son here, and but all of that was me. I had thoughts of suicide. I was sad. Sometimes I didn't have gas money, didn't have a place, nowhere to go, didn't have anybody to love. And when we did the video, we were just gonna do the video. We lost Bradley, my first and my third husband. We lost him around that time, and he went to work, and he didn't return home, and he was killed in a forklift accident. The forklift flipped over on him, and then when I tell you, that was one of the hardest moments in my life, or the hardest things I've gone through, because Bradley was young, and you just never plan. You just never think about that, and what hurt me to my core is that when my oldest son found out about the death of his father, I was at work and my phone was away, and he was trying to call me, and I didn't have my phone. And I found out later that day but I still sometimes I cannot believe it, because Bradley was more than my husband or my ex. He was my former husband. He was my friend. And then there's one of my favorite songs, "Where Is My Husband?" I got a lot of criticism for that song. And that is one of my favorite songs because it's true. A lot of women, what the church disappoints me because they're not real. They don't deal with real issues. They want some of them, because now some of them are. They want to just act like, you're a robot. We are not robots. That's a true song. Where is my husband? That's something that I have asked God daily. That's something that I've prayed about. That's something that I know other women have asked God. And so I just put it in a song. But what I did, I ministered and I showed them after all of that, after all of your angst, after you go through everything, after you ask God questions, you just got to trust him. And it seems like a lot the church members, the church people, it seemed like they missed the ministry. I minister in everything that I do, and they missed that and was so ready to criticize me. But that's how some of the people in the church are, and it's sad. We can't help each other because the first thing we want to do is criticize. When I first started reading the Bible, I always looked for myself. And in the Old Testament, I saw myself in Joseph, in my sufferings, and the different things that I've been through. In the New Testament, I saw myself in the woman at the well. And of course, the obvious is that she was married to many men. And that's, of course, me. But it goes deeper than that. Her redemption, how she was redeemed, how Jesus redeemed her, how she was someone that people wouldn't think that Jesus would talk to. And that's me. That's how I felt about me. But yet God chose me. I used to say all the time, God, what are they gonna think when they find out how many times I've been married? And you've chosen me? God doesn't choose who we would choose. He always chooses someone who has a history, someone who's gone through something, someone who has compassion. Because I have a lot of compassion for people, for things who've gone through things that I've gone through, or who've gone through things that I haven't gone through. So God has given me a lot of compassion, but that's why I identify with her. I identify with her not simply because of her trespasses, but more importantly, I identify with her because of his redemption, how his blood, how his spirit, how he covered her. And that's what, I don't want to start preaching, but that's what I identify with the most. He covered me. Oh my God. When I was ugly, when I was stained, when I was messed up to somebody else, God came and he covered me. He said, you are my child, and I'm going to do something with you. And so that's what I saw. I saw how that woman ran away from there and she started preaching the word of God and started preaching how he had changed her life. And so I get excited. I just get excited about talking about it. So I identify with her stains, but I more importantly identify with her redemption. How he pulled her out of that mess that she was in. And so that God did the same to me. He pulled me out of my mess. Sometimes we don't think we're messy, but we're messy. And God pulled me out of that. And so that's why I identify with her. I don't think that when I chose the title, it was just perfect. God gave me that title, SHAY7, the woman at the well. So my future goals, I want to continue singing. And like I said, I want to get better. I want to use what I have to bless the Lord. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be like anybody else's. But I'm going to use what I have. I also want to continue writing. I want to produce films. I write screenplays. Of course, God has called me a business mogul. God will tell you about you. And that was something I had to go and look. Honestly, when God told me I was a business mogul, I had to go and make sure I knew what he was saying. I had to go and look it up. And so I am looking forward to all of that to come to pass. I believe God. When he told me that I was going to get into Spelman, I got into Spelman. When he told me that I was going to graduate Spelman, I graduated Spelman. When he told me I was going to get into Emory, I got into Emory, and graduated Emory. And so it's all these things that he's told me that I could do that I didn't even know I could do myself. So he knows more about you. God knows more about you than you know yourself. So you must believe him. And I believe that I am a business mogul. I believe that. I continue to say that. And I know that God in it. And what I want to say to people is, it is God's job. When God gives a word to you, it is his job, as much as more than it is yours, to make it come to pass. So he'll get you in the right area. He'll put you with the right people. He'll bring the right resources. He's going to make his word come to pass. He didn't say it so it could fall down to the ground or return to him void. He said it because it is so. And so that's what I stick to. I continue to remind myself, God said, I am a business mogul. I am a business mogul. And so even when I get down and I get tired and I don't know how I'm going to do this and I don't know how I'm going to do that, I continue to push myself. We had so many deaths in my family in 2018, 2019, and it was very hurtful. And I had to slow down a bit and had to, ask God a few questions, But I'm back at it again. And that's what you have to do. You have to keep going and trust God's word. So I trust his word.